The MIT Enterprise Forum Northwest is one of 27 chapters worldwide. We are an all-volunteer organization, and our mission is to inspire, connect, and educate our region's entrepreneurial and technology business community.
Welcome to Boomers, Technology, and Health, Consumers Taking Charge. As you all have probably heard to nauseating detail in the mass media, the Boomers are first turning 65 this year, the very first of them, but they will have a substantial impact on adoption of tech-enabled health and wellness products for personal use. Let's get started. Our two presenters. John Sherry is Director of User Experience Design at Intel Corporation. Trained as an anthropologist and ethnographer, John has spent the past 15 years applying the tools of social science to problems of strategy and design in the technology industry, first at Microsoft and most recently with Intel. He's co-led products looking at mobile technology use, the use of technology in primary care clinics, and identifying new product and business opportunities for Intel's digital health group.
Thank you, Frank. As he mentioned, I'm an anthropologist by training. We love to tell stories and show pictures. The stories are all going to have to do with insights and design principles for products. The principles are what are important, and they apply. And I think actually that's what makes these stories so memorable to me. So, Mary is our first story. She's 91 years old. She lives in Southern Ireland, in Cork. And she had a TV up in the guest room of her house, and we asked her about it. Why is that TV sitting up on a shelf unplugged? That's for when I get old, she said. Mary stood out to us. She really reminded us of the importance of aging happens to people in a sort of stepwise process. There are definitely kind of plateaus and slides. Think about it, the evolutionary biologists call it punctuated equilibrium. But actually people experience it with a bit of adaptive denial. And then there'll be a watershed moment and then the next plateau. The insight for us is plan ahead, like Mary did. Not many people do that. And if you try to design for people when they're on that steep slope, you're really going to have trouble. So the lesson there is if you wait until trying to design for people after a crisis has happened, after a health incident, you're probably too late.
Dr. Mark Pearson is Vice President of Clinical Information and Quality for Peace Health St. Joseph Medical Center in Bellingham. He's led a series of successful community-wide programs, including Pursuing Perfection, which led to the development of community-based, patient-centric personal health records called Shared Care Plan, and served as inspiration for the creation of Microsoft's Health Vault and Washington State Health Record Banking initiatives.
What I'm going to try to do is tell you perhaps the few things that we've learned in the last 10 to 15 years that might be useful for you. 4 points with 3 caveats. I think it is a great time to innovate in the healthcare space. I'll tell you why. The opportunity, in my opinion, is between the current players, not so much in the space of the players, but between them. But that's also the big challenge and the opportunity. Self-care, which is a term we use in healthcare, I don't know if it makes any sense to you guys, but the idea that people are actually competent and can do something for themselves is, and they are indeed, has a huge opportunity, but the tools have to match the capabilities and the interests of the users. You can't just go innovate on your own and then try to foist it off on these people. And then coordination, I think, is the key. Basically, if you want to think about social networking software, what I would call enhanced social software might actually be the core of the future for at least the paradigm I see coming.
Thank you, Mark. Our 3 panelists are sitting to my immediate right, and this is not a political statement, it's just geographic. Let's start off. Jay Bartow, Medify. First off, what is Medify? How does it fit into this whole environment that John and Mark shared with us, and what do you think about their perspective as well?
Well, you know, it's great because a lot of the things that that these guys have talked about are right up our alley. So just to start off, Medify, at Medify we are a venture-funded startup just emerging from stealth mode, founded by myself and my co-founder Derek Street. And what we're doing is building medical information services and community tools for families caring for a loved one with a serious medical illness. i.e. a complex and chronic disease. And so we're really going after a large and growing consumer base that has an insatiable appetite for information. And feels like with their participation and the help of the family, they can really make the difference in the care for their loved one.
What major obstacles do you see for what Jay is trying to do?
How do you get from where we are with not a very transparent system? I mean, there are laws that say it's supposed to be transparent, but we have people of various ages and various predilections who are more or less comfortable with that, from nurses, doctors, even institutions. And that technology won't solve that. That has to be a bunch of conversations with people having conversations about value and shared values. And I wouldn't try to force anyone, not a hospital, healthcare system, or university. It won't work very well. So it is, how do you design these solutions together, which is what I've been up to for 15 years, and maybe I thought it should have taken 2 years. But conversations are how you innovate in these complex spaces, and you work it out, and you show people that, wow, your assumptions are true. They'll get better healthcare outcomes and better results. Yeah. But if you have people have other assumptions, other experiences, other fears, you have to create a safe space for innovation. The social innovation is a lot harder than the technical innovation, but it's essential.
Clayton, what do you think about the sort of general approach that our two presenters have given us, and where does what you're doing fit into all of this?
Well, what's exciting is the opportunity for entrepreneurs, because if you think about this market, 3 things that I think about when I'm looking at startup companies or talking to entrepreneurs is that, one, the size of the market, but it's not just the size, it's how inefficient this market is. I mean, imagine you've got $2.5 trillion being spent, and there's studies out there that indicate potentially 75% of it is spent on preventable and chronic diseases. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're thinking about where's there a value creation opportunity and how could you participate in creating that value, there's few markets, probably no other market in the US like that. Second, the quarterback has walked off the field. And not only did he walk off the field, he took the ball with him. So right now we have a shortage of primary care physicians, and it's only getting exacerbated as time goes on.
Tandy, so what's your take about all of this? And, you know, because you're involved with hardware as well as software and services, right?
We want to be able to take care of ourselves. However, where are the technology solutions that will help us? We're really only at the forefront at taking baby steps in that way. I have kind of a somewhat outrageous or audacious expectation of actually using personal robots, which don't exist today, as a way of applying this technology and providing one of what I think will be many vehicles of technology to try to address this issue.
How do we keep technology like the web-based medical records that, you know, the type of stuff Jay's doing for caregivers and Mark's patient-centric medical records and Tandy's robotic systems and services from being that TV up on the top shelf that people will say, well, I'll get to that when I get old. It's just nice knowing it's around. How do you get them to use it now?
Meet them where they live. You know, provide a value proposition that's relevant today, not when you're 91. Not when you're, you know, however old she was waiting for, 107. So that's one. You know, there are many ways to connect and to collaborate around health that, like Mark said, are about prevention and wellness and aspiration, goal setting, that are not part of the typical health discourse.
It does seem clear that this isn't just primarily a technology problem. This is a cultural problem.
Wouldn't we run the risk, for example, from Maveron's perspective, of a company crossing the line into the scary regulatory area, which does tend to be a deadener on innovation for, you know, good reasons in many cases?
Yeah, so I look far and wide for anything that has any implication that it may have to go down that route. And so they've made some noise about apps, and I think apps that are in any way invasive run that risk.
Invasive how? Like ultrasound?
Potentially.
Potentially, okay. So how does the entrepreneur, Jay, avoid from getting into a case? You're not invasive, obviously, but I mean,
Sure.
how do you avoid getting to the point where you might be regulated?
Yeah, no, that's frightening and very frustrating too. I mean, you know, as a technologist, I'm used to, you know, being able to put out there whatever the technology and my ability to acquire data, sometimes from public or third-party sources, can afford my product. So, the idea that a big brother can swoop in at any time and start hassling me is frightening. And as an entrepreneur, I have to watch out for that. So it's scary.
And it's not just even the FDA, it's Congress, 23andMe, the genetics company.
I was just going to bring them up.
Yeah.
Looking at the context, we have the first boomers turning 65 this year. We have people who feel that they are capable of dealing with technology, moving into this group. We have a lot of entrepreneurial activity. We have money interested in this area. When will some of these concepts that everybody here has been talking about get traction in a large enough part of the marketplace to make it pay off?
It could be 25 years. It's going to take a catastrophe or a crisis of bigger proportions than we're seeing now, obviously, because the will still isn't there. And, a lot of people are quite healthy till 85, and that's the first boomers.
Traction the next 5 years, you could have major change within the next 10 years if the federal government accepts the fact that there's a crisis instead of pretending there isn't a crisis. Because, I know a little bit about medicine, nothing about government, but I do look at the system and believe that you don't get reelected if you are very forward thinking. You need a real crisis to take bold action in America. And so it has to be presented as what it is, which is a wholesale crisis. And then it could happen very quickly.
What I try to think through is what's the opportunity for competition? And so if it's a consumer-based system and if I'm being offered solutions that are much more rational and as I'm paying more every year, dramatically more, I'm going to become more engaged as a consumer and I'm going to start shopping. And so when's the tipping point going to go from what I said earlier, that healthcare is free, that actually healthcare is wickedly expensive, and I'm going to, be motivated to think about being well as opposed to being sick, and then I'm going to be presented solutions that are actually engaging me as opposed to making me a passive consumer. And I'd say that's a 5 to 10 year time horizon that I believe we're going to start to see traction with.
There's other cultural barriers at play here for the evolution of our systems. One big one that we really didn't talk about that much is security. This S word that's brought up all the time when people propose particularly technology innovations. My wife recently, to the point the woman in the front row asked earlier about sending images with her phone. My wife wanted to send an image of a rash on my 7-year-old son's forehead to our doctor so she could just look at it and say, is this anything we should be concerned about? And she was told, no, you can't do that. Why not? Well, because security. Well, why? Well, a hacker might intercept that and see that your 7-year-old son has a rash on his forehead. Really, geez, we're willing to take that risk. But the big picture though is that I think in our culture right now we're having a big crisis around privacy and security. I think older folks have a lot of reservations about privacy and security, and it does appear that the younger generation seems to be very reckless with it. And so I think those are big things that have to be rectified, along with, of course, the economic factors.
All right, and Tandy, your traction timeline?
I would pretty much track with what's already been said. I think that we'll see some interesting solutions in the space in the next 5 to 10 years that will be useful examples to say this is a good thing, this is where things can go from here.
All right, let me ask Gailey Duncan from the MIT Enterprise Forum of the Northwest back up on the stage, and let me thank our panel for their thoughts on all of this.
Well, that was a very vital conversation about a very vital issue to all of us. And I'd like to thank our speakers, thank our moderator, once again recognize Michael Galelli's leadership, the hard work of him and his team for this. And let's just give him another hand. If you like this event, we have another Enterprise Forum coming up on March 16th. It's on what we're calling the Internet of Things. So that should be very thought-provoking. Anyway, thank you so much for coming. Thank you to our sponsors for this event. And let's just give everybody one more round of applause. Thank you.